have two views on the optics thing. First of all, there is legitimate criticism on optics. Like if you're going out and you're Roman saluting at news cameras with a swastika flag, then you are a fucking mongoloid. You're a fucking moron. Because first of all, you don't even know the meaning of a Roman salute, which is a designation of honor towards someone, one of your comrades. And so if you're Roman saluting some Jew with a camera, then you don't even know what the fuck you're doing. That's the first thing. Now, however, on the other hand, I do hate some of the optics cucks that will, back in the day, back a few months ago when they would talk about like some of these TWP guys, they would say, "Oh, look at them, they're fat, they got beards, they're they're a little rough around the edges." Well, guess what? Most Americans are fat. Most Americans are rough around the edges, and most Americans are tacky. That's just how it is. You're not going to get an army of Adonis male models going out and fighting in the street for a radical cause. It's never going to happen. It never has. Every radical movement is full of misfits. The question is that we can accept misfits and we can have people that are, not exactly the most attractive or not exactly the most, educated even. But, it doesn't matter as long as they're honorable, as long as they're good people, virtuous, as long as they do the right thing. That's what matters. Because you know what? Some people that have super polished images are also scumbags, just in a different way. So this whole optics thing is idiotic, in my opinion. But on the other hand, there are some genuine criticisms. So yeah, I'm in the middle of the optics debate. I'm in the center of it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You kind of nailed it. Like, look, if you're Roman saluting, like right, right at a news reporter you're not even, why are you even greeting them like that? Right? It doesn't fit to greet them like that. So you're just trying to do this shock and awe type of thing, or you don't know what you're doing. And it just seems like, I mean, I know that people, like you said, right? They point out you're fat or you're no, you don't look right. You don't look like the ideal. And it's like, yeah, but they look like the reality. Like
exactly.
there's a difference. There's the ideal and then there's the reality. And we try to operate somewhere in between those two. But
that goes, part of that problem, a lot of the optics sucks, not all, some of them are right, but others are arrested by their liberal temperaments, their conservative temperaments. They live in an abstraction and fight over abstractions, and they refuse to deal with the real world where, yes, the average person in Tennessee is fat and tacky. So, yes, they're going to not be dressed like, they're not going to have perfectly tailored uniforms. They're going to be a couple pounds overweight. That's what America looks like. That's America. And if you don't like it, well, then you're anti-American and you don't live in the real world. This is what we have to work with. So I agree. We have to get people to be healthier. We have to teach people a better way of living. But in the beginning, this is how it's going to be.
Exactly. In the beginning, I mean, that's the whole point. We kind of want to be able to come in and say, yeah, no, look, we'll be accepting of, and this is the type of accepting, right? You're accepting of your fellow man, and maybe they are slightly flawed, right? But it's not ruining your society. And look, if you can actually get them behind you, then maybe we could actually start to implement things in which would help them, right? Help them get closer to the ideal. And
what the problem is in America, especially now. I'll use another historical analogy, so we got the two main schools of military thought. You got West Point Academy, the officers, how they train the officers there, and then you had the Prussian school in Germany. This is before World War II. So, this is just to show you why the American way of approaching these issues is so flawed, and it's motivated more by sadism and cruelty and an individual will to power rather than trying to help people. So here's how it worked at West Point. They would take these officers in, they would humiliate them, break them down as people, break down their independent will, and just berate them over and over and over again, make them feel inferior, right? So compare that to the Prussian school, where officers were taught to think for themselves. They were given a plan, a blueprint, and then they were taught how to think, not break them down to conform, but how to think like a military man, like an officer. So you go into battle, and there's no question that in World War II, the German officers were head over heels over the American ones trained at West Point. They're far superior. And that is because of the way they were taught. They were taught to empower people rather than make them feel inferior. So that's the difference between American culture and Europe that I think needs to be integrated into America. We got to stop berating people to try and because a lot of people do this shit just to hurt their feelings and stuff.
Yeah.
And if they don't hurt their feelings, they just make them angry and they just close off even more. The best way, if you find someone that has a problem with their weight or they're not very presentable, you have to empower them and show them why being presentable and losing weight will make their lives better. That's the real key to actually building solidarity, people, a community of the front of comrades, empowering one another rather than putting each other down. I mean, of course, as a man, we're going to fucking bants each other. We're going to make jokes, including fat jokes, including stuff. But when you're actually trying to like just break someone down for fun, just to do it, then, you're probably a little man, you're probably a little man yourself.
Well, that's kind of the thing, I think, because there are certain things in which I do feel there should be social shame to try to curtail certain behaviors.
Yeah.
But in terms of, I do think a lot of it is actually done because maybe we're resentful about other things, right? And then we see this one thing where if we actually, like you said, if we kind of operated as a brotherhood, as a unified people, you wouldn't naturally want to go towards kind of the degrading side, right? The humiliating side. You would actually want to, kind of lift your brother or your sister up with you. And I really do think that there is such a high level of resentment and bitterness. We can't even, and I mean, I guess because I've been, just kind of circling around these things for a couple months now. And one of the things that I just keep seeing, right, is just this, and I know it's labeled as, kind of infighting, but really people are fighting over the dumbest crap.
Well, no, a lot of the points of contention are real. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff about white people in America, in the South even, that are contemptible. But people have to understand and be a little more understanding because it's not entirely their fault. For example, if you look at something like the redneck subculture, right? I mean, you look at this and it's a Halloween costume. It's not something. I mean, you look at the rich tradition of the South, which is one of some of the greatest universities were in the South before. There's a large intellectual culture and stuff, and this is all killed. And you know what? You can't really just blame the people because it's not their fault. You look at, for example, the country music television, right? That's owned by Viacom, which is owned by Sumner Redstone, who's a Jew. And so what Sumner Redstone does is he builds these different networks tailored towards different races and different ethnic groups. And he creates these subcultures. So, Sumner Redstone owns Black Entertainment Television, where he teaches blacks, whatever you can say about blacks, they're definitely not doing their best right now. And part of that is because this Jew is purposely bringing out the worst in them. The same is true with the country music channel, country music television. It has these reality shows on it. It purposely brings out the worst in people there. Like it takes ignorant people and it makes them even more ignorant. So this is also a Jewish problem, and showing these people how they're being manipulated is very important,